Yeah, man, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on the podcast this morning.
Hey, thank you for the invite.
You're welcome. I'm going to start with, first of all, because we were talking about this, I think, yesterday, the Marshall in the background over there. This is a new purchase, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it was a bit of a trade to be honest, because I had a Mesa Boogie, a Mesa Boogie Stiletto,
Oh, yeah.
212 50-watt combo, and it's so heavy.
Yes.
It was so heavy, and it had wheels on it, and even that didn't help. So I found a random guy on Facebook who wanted it, offered me a plethora of things.
Yeah.
Traded it. However, so it's this Origin 50 head
Yeah,
here,
that's it.
and this is a cab that looks like a Vox cab,
It does, yes.
but it's not actually. It's some random person on Facebook built it, and one of my tutors at BIM, a guy called Terry Lewis, he bought it, put V30s in it, and it's
Yeah.
one of the best sounding cabs I've ever played. It's super light, which is obviously great for gigs. I've been, you know, testing out greenbacks in the Zilla cab or
Yes.
V30s in that, and V30 is definitely one.
Yeah, nice. Cool. Very cool. And let's go through the rig then, because I'm interested in that myself. So, and I'm sure other people are going to be interested if you're a guitarist.
Okay, just to clarify,
Yeah,
rigged
go on.
rigged for gigs, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there are some things I will definitely take for some gigs, and some gigs it's just not going to happen.
Yes.
So I've got a Fender DeVille
Yeah.
212. That's probably the best club amp you can get. Always heard over a drummer, super light. Never an issue with that. I've got a dual Kemper rack underneath.
This
Um,
is, I was going to ask you about this, right? Because I've got one Kemper rack, right, and I always feel concerned or worried that if that goes down at a gig, then I have got a backup, which is my Richie Kotzen RK5 fly rig thing here, which would get me through a gig.
yeah,
But I always forget; it's always on my desk here because I use it for teaching.
yeah,
Always forget to put it in the bag, and then I get to the gig and I go, and I've had a couple of occasions where
yeah,
I'll turn on the Kemper, and it just stays on the Kemper logo and it doesn't go any further than that, and then I'm like, oh no, and I turn it off, it clicks, and then I turn it back on again, and it works luckily. But I'm worried that one day that is not gonna
Well,
come on.
I could obviously tell you hundreds of stories. I'm sure we'll get into it in this podcast.
Yeah,
I have got to a gig after practicing through that rig. I've driven half an hour, and it's just not worked. So obviously, I'm sure we'll get into it. But
yeah,
yeah, I now like that's obviously a big rig. I have a Kemper stage. I basically take out for everything though. It just sits in the corner,
okay,
and that only really goes out if I'm like, this is serious and I need a beat rig.
yeah, yeah. And I suppose have you got like the copied profiles on the stage across to your rack? I'm
Everything
guessing.
like a USB stick that lives in my Cosmic Ears case.
Hmm.
And then yeah, so one that's got firmware on, one that's got the show file on, so that they kind of can't corrupt each other. Those two things. I've had that happen before on one memory stick. So
Right.
it's kind of having two different things, and everything's all synced up, and yeah. So yeah, that's that rig, and that's it's quite nice. I've got a little patch panel at the back where you've got two XLRs and the Ethicon. So I
Yes.
don't actually ever plug in the kind of rubbish Ethernet port.
Yes.
Kind of just plop three cables over at the back, and everything's changed over. Click the guitar in the front.
That makes sense, mate. I mean, mine's very similar to that, and I use the alternative output on the back for the guitar as well. So then all the cables are just going out the back of the rig, so you can't. There's no sort of cables hanging or dangling down the front. It looks pretty like slick,
Yeah.
doesn't it? When
I also have a wireless. There's like a 3U drawer there. I actually have a little wireless unit that is the Shure GLX16 pedal thing. I'd
oh
like to
yeah,
get a rack one, but they're so expensive for a really good rack wireless. So
yeah,
I've just got the little pedal one that I just put on. But it's nice because then it's movable between rigs.
yeah. Looks
It's,
great, mate. Looks really cool.
then there's this Origin 50 head and 212 V30. Now I've got a little pedal board, which again, if I was doing like a pub gig or a club gig or something that's not in ears, I'll take an amp and a pedal board always.
Hmm.
I don't. Oh, I was listening to your podcast with the guy. I think it was last week.
Oh
To
yeah.
have a listen to it, and he it was interesting because I have a similar opinion with miking an amp up and then put it in your in ears. In my opinion, I don't particularly like it
Hmm.
because, as we're all aware, you get on stage and if one person trips over the mic, the
Yeah.
mic stand, then
Yep.
you're stuffed for your sound.
Yes.
Um, yeah, just a little pedal board. get me through a gig, some overdrives, delay, reverb, that kind of thing.
Yeah, how are you getting on with the Marshall, mate? Because I love mine, but it's really plain. Really, in my opinion, it's really plain, really basic what it does. But if you run, I run a reverb in the effects loop and some delays in the effects loop, stuff like that. And to me, that amp comes to life, and I love that amp. But other people I know go, oh, it's just a bit. I don't really get on with it. It's just a bit bland and a bit sort of clean. And
I think
what's your thoughts on it?
I normally don't ever turn an amp up loud enough that I can use the
Right.
overdrive how I want it, like a screaming lead sound. So, I mean, I like it. It's a great clean. Controversially, I love a Marshall clean sound, and I don't know why everyone berates it because, in my opinion, it sounds great. Um, yeah, the only gripe I have with the Origin 50 is
Yep.
there's no reverb. It's so
Yeah.
annoying.
Yes.
So I've just bought a little Hall of Fame that's just going to live on the top of it,
Mhm.
just in the effects loop all the time.
Yeah.
Because again, plug in pedal boards into different amps. I also have a Blues Junior, but a friend of mine's borrowing that at the moment. Um, Kind of pedal board moves around, but I kind of like just plugging into an amp for practice and just having the reverb, just clean and reverb, and just that being what you practice with.
Yeah, I mean, I've always liked like you. I've always liked Marshall clean. I've never had an issue with it, and I've owned boogies over the years, and you know, apart from being insanely expensive to buy like brand new or whatever, they I don't know. If I'm honest with you, mate, I always had issues with them. Like the Mark V head I had every single switching combination possible, and
Yeah,
it went back to the shop twice,
yeah,
and it was brand new, and it just to me maybe it sounded great, but it was just a little bit complicated. It did too many things. It was trying to do too many things. I mean, it's great at it, but it just tried to do too many things. The Marshall
yeah.
for me is simple. I know the layout of the Marshall really well, and I can anything that I can't get from it, I get it from pedals and things like that. So
Yeah,
um,
I think I've had I've had one great experience with the Mesa. A friend of mine owns a Mesa Boogie Lone Star,
yeah,
212 combo V30s as well, and that's the best clean I've ever heard. Like beautiful, absolutely beautiful.
hmm
However, it's really heavy,
yeah,
and I think when you're loading in and out of gigs, and it's sometimes just taking a combo, just a little Fender thing will work
yeah,
just as well.
yes,
And
yeah.
at the end of the day, we're the only people who actually care about our tone.
Yeah, no, you're right. You are right. Yeah, generally, audience are not in. You know, don't really care about that. They just know if you recognise the riff, you're playing, they recognise it, and that's
Yeah,
pretty much it. So
I,
we've started at rig. We've started at rig, Andrew. We've started at the, only because it caught my attention in the background there. So,
yeah.
and I should start with, in fact, like Andrew, if people like don't know who you are and what you do, it'd be great for you to just most people sort of just give a little introduction of what you do in the industry as a guitarist and as a musician. What is it you do?
So I am a freelance guitar player. I don't think there's such a thing as session guitar player anymore. There's not someone who's a recording. There's not someone who's just a live player. There's not someone who just does theatre shows. There's not someone who's just does this. I think being a freelance guitar player is how I would describe myself. I
Hmm.
do many aspects of playing guitar full time.
Yeah. And how long have you been full time? Have you been full time since you sort of came out of school and
Yeah.
college, or did you do something else? Or
So I came out of uni, and for about 3 or 4 months, I was weighing up what I was going to do. So I had only part-time jobs, still being self-employed though, where I might work in a coffee shop, or I actually did some cleaning after uni. I just wanted to basically not tie myself down and lock myself into a job
hmm
where I was constantly my own boss, I guess you could say.
yeah,
Um, and I did that, and then I started guitar teaching, and then gigs kind of progressed on from that. Left some artists kind of progressed on from that. I don't know if I've skated away from the question, but
no, you haven't, mate. No, you're just filling in a bit more detail. So because I want to talk to you about because you've worked with some artists as well, and I've seen that recently. Seen some stuff pop up, and um, you worked recently. I think you did like was it like a Christmas thing you did?
yeah,
You play who was that with? I saw that recently.
Louise Redknapp.
Louise Redknapp. Yeah, I saw that pop up. Was she good to work with?
Do you know what? I went into that very apprehensive because
Yeah.
I've met some famous people before and thought, oh my goodness, what a diva. And do you know what? She was actually one of the most lovely people I've ever had to work with.
Oh, nice.
And I don't know why I'm saying I'm surprised. I'm sure she was going to be lovely, but someone of her kind of stature, I kind of thought there's potential she could be a bit awkward. And that was really interesting, actually, that gig, because the way it came about was weird. We had a 20-minute rehearsal, and I just got sent the songs, and we were deliberating it still the night before. And then, yeah, 20-minute rehearsal, go and record it, and then they said, okay, now we just want the isolated guitar. They put a microphone in front of my acoustic, and there's like 15 people just staring at me, and there's no click track. So it was like everyone's watching, don't mess it up. So I was just in my head kind of singing along with the song, hoping that I was getting the structure right from what we just did in case I needed to overlay it at all.
Yeah. Mate, I mean, let's go dig into that a little bit because
Yeah.
in that situation where you had like everyone watching you and, I'm guessing Louise was there as well.
Yeah.
Was there any thoughts? What was going through your head then, mate? Because I always find this really interesting. Like, because I've had things like this where I've played with other musicians and that, and then sometimes I don't know about you, but I have had thoughts go through my head, going, "Oh God, I think about my depth here. Like, this could go horribly wrong." Even though you're confident, you know what you're doing. Do you get those thoughts in those situations? Because I have.
I regularly get those. It's imposter syndrome, right? It's where you believe that you're not meant to be where you're supposed to be, and
Yeah.
everything like, oh, did I leave the oven on? Like, and you're like, just as you're about to count into a song, it's like this is not the time to think about that. I mean, I definitely get that, and it's something that I don't know. I haven't cracked per se, but I've got things in my head now that I say is stuff like, you've worked hard for this,
Hmm.
you've done the prep, just turn your brain off and play.
Yeah.
If I haven't had the time and the prep, then it's normally something like, you've practiced enough for this.
Yes.
Like everything that you've encompassed is for this.
Hmm.
Um, I guess when you kind of look at people you end up depping for, that may have done the gig before you, how they may have reacted and how they may have thought, that's quite, you can get in your head about that.
Yes.
But I guess it's about bringing yourself back down, isn't it? And just going, no, actually, they called me for the job. There was a reason for it.
Hmm.
I'm. There was a quote that I can't remember. It might have been. I don't know where I read it online. I don't want to misquote someone. But it was, sometimes you have to think you're the best guitar player in the room because it's likely that if they've called you, you probably are.
Yeah.
You know, if
Yeah.
it's just, if there's a bass player and a drummer and a keyboard player there, and they only play basic guitar, you're the best guitar player in the room, whether you think you are or not.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Sometimes that's ground
you're
yourself
right,
wrong.
mate, and that's a really good thing to think when you're in those situations because, as you said, if you are stepping, say you're depping for somebody, and you look up to that musician, another guitarist, and you think, Jesus, they're top of their game, they're really good, and then they've asked you to do the job, and you're thinking, oh, I'm not like him, and I don't play like him, and I'm completely different. And if you get that in your head when you're at the gig, it's not going to help, is it? It's not going to help the
Yeah.
situation.
I've had a couple of those kind of bigger players where I've had to dep and I've just gone, this is not going well. I did a Michael Jackson tribute this year where we
Right.
went on a little tour, and that was really fun, doing kind of theatres of up to kind of 1,000 people or so. And I was chatting to the guys in the van, and I was like, oh, so how many more gigs you got? 'Cause I think I was booked for 2 or 3 dates in the end,
Hmm.
and I had such a good time. It was only on the first night before we were going on. I said, "Oh, so your guys are on tour next week, right?" And they said, "Yeah, yeah." And I said, "Oh, okay. So who's on guitar for that?" Now, "Oh, Jennifer Batten's playing with us next week."
Christ.
And I was like, "No, don't tell me this before we're about to go on stage."
Jeez, yeah.
Yeah, so that was one of them, and then the other one was Phil Short, who
Yeah.
we both know is just insane, lovely
Well,
guy.
he's currently playing with Westlife, wasn't he, on tour? Like, I know. So, he's top of his game, Phil, isn't he? So,
Yeah, so like, again, I don't play anything like him, but he called me for the job,
yeah.
and I guess like he booked me as his dep, so you got to trust that. I guess it's not even about what you think about yourself at that point. It's, well, they've said it's okay, so it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And just a matter of interest as well. When you go for these jobs and you play with the like Louise and stuff like that, what information are they giving you before you get to the gig? Does it depend on the gig? Or some people like really give you lots of information, and then some people just give you like turn up at this time, be there at this time, that's it.
Um, I would say out of all those things, it can range normally from 2 weeks of prep to the night before you may get the songs, or you get the songs on the day. I think there's different levels of expectation. So for this, like Michael Jackson tribute, there was 2 weeks notice where they sent me two 45-minute sets and
Mhm.
like videos of it and said, learn this.
Yeah.
So you learn it. Whereas the Louise thing, that was, I think that may have been like 2 or 3 days notice, and there was like 3 or 4 songs we had to learn. But again, I didn't know the key, didn't know the arrangement, didn't know the structure. It was just make sure you. In my mind, I was like, I just want to be able to play this and sound and feel good.
Yes.
Because if you're the only instrument there, you don't have anyone else to rely on.
Nope.
As long as it feels good, I guess. And I guess
Mhm.
that's where, in my mind, all the guitar players I aspire to play like and listen to, their chord stuff is just as good as the lead stuff,
Yes.
if not better
Yeah.
sometimes. So yeah, that's kind of where I was at. That is just make it feel good.
Yeah. No, that's great. Great advice. I mean, are you? I'm guessing. I think you're based. Are you on the outskirts of London? Is that right or not?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm Southwest London.
Okay. Yeah. And do you
Well,
find London sort of a I mean, for music, I've obviously heard over the years that it's the place to be. Do you find it's very is the place to be, or is it very competitive, or how do you?
it's actually competitive. You've got some of the best guitar players, definitely in the country, but you know, most of them are foreign and have come overseas
Mhm.
to come and get the jobs.
Yeah.
Um, I guess a very good guitar player that I can think of off the top of my head is a guy called Luca Ferrone. He played for Stormzy, Camille Cabello. List goes on. Insane guitar player. He came from Italy, and
Yeah.
like you're then, I don't know, expected to then go and I guess compete for a job,
Yes.
which is difficult because music isn't a competition, but the workplace is.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
No.
yeah, London is very competitive. However, there is so much work for everyone. There's like I didn't I thought it was going to be there's like 3 gigs and there's 3 guitar players and that's it. And there's thousands of gigs, thousands of work all over the country. So it's if you're playing well and you know the right people and you're doing your homework and you're practicing and you're getting better all the time, you will have a career, I guess. I mean, that's
Yeah.
been definitely my journey over the last few years.
Yeah, no, that's good. And do a lot of those gigs. Just I'm interested myself, and I'm sure other musicians like want to ask these questions. And if anyone does have questions for
Mm.
Andrew, I know we will check on the thread. I'll check in a second. But if anyone has any questions for you about playing with artists, playing in theatre shows, and all the things that you've done, it would be great for them to drop them in. And I'm sure you'd like to answer some questions on those. But yeah, I was going to ask you do these gigs come from agents? Do you feel, or is it like just like a few people that you know, and then they just sort of get passed down the line, and it's sort of who you know, really, I suppose.
Okay, so if I'm doing like a wedding gig or a function gig, that's
Yep.
definitely normally.
Yep.
Or I might get phoned by another musician, but that's probably through an agent. Because I guess a lot of people, unless you're like yourself, you've been in a band for 12 years, right?
Yeah.
12, 13 years.
Yeah.
Like, you have a reputation, you have clients that you would have played at their brother's wedding, their mum's 50th birthday, and all that stuff. So
Yes.
there's like a family network of
Mhm.
people. Whereas I guess most people, they kind of go, wedding band. Oh, I like these people. Let's book them.
Yeah.
So a lot of stuff comes from agencies, and then obviously from other people. I have never paid an agent, and I don't think I would because I don't think the music industry is like maybe the acting world potentially,
Mhm.
where there may be an audition for a gig, there may not. It might just be the MD gets their friend in. It might be that they hold auditions and you can apply to be on it, or so that sort of stuff and theatre stuff doesn't come from agencies, from my experience.
Yeah. Okay, that's a fair comment. I mean, I was going to ask you as well, like, and I'm sure other people are going to be interested in this answer to this question is, um, on a general session, Andrew, say you get a call for some session work for somebody, you're going to go into the studio and do
Yeah.
your recording for them. What are you taking with you? What is in your sort of your gig bag? What are you taking with you, mate?
Okay, so I guess it depends because all the stuff that I've ever had, and obviously I'm not a big session player like some of these guys in town,
Mm-hmm.
but normally they would say, "Oh, it's this kind of thing." But if someone phoned me up tomorrow and said, "Can you come to a studio? We've got an artist, and you're going to lay guitar tracks down for an album." in my opinion, is really simple. Strat, a Tele, a Les Paul,
Hmm.
an acoustic, and probably a Kemper and a Fender.
Yep. Okay.
And the reason why is if it's a really like rootsy kind of vibe, and that you turn up with a Kemper and they're like, oh, like, no, 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 we're authentic. It's like, no, I've got an amp as well. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But 9 out of 10 times, like Kemp, you're going to be so buried in the track anyway, especially if it's kind of poppy, that they're not
Yes.
going to really hear you anyway. But yeah, I
I've
think
had that recently, mate. I had the same thing. Before I turned up, we had obviously the backwards and forwards because I always want to make sure I'm taking the right gear for the right thing. And he adamantly said, and that's fine. No Kempers. Don't bring your Kemper. And I was like, that's fine. I'll bring a. And I took a Fender. I haven't got it anymore. I took a Fender bass breaker at the time, and it was great. But he just said, he said it's not like I don't like them. I know they do a good job. He said, but I want just a real amp on this track.
yeah,
Um, and I was like, that's fine, no problem at all. I'll take the combo. But yeah,
I think
most people are pretty open to it, aren't they? But
it's rigs for gigs, isn't it? I have a 335, and a friend's also borrowing that on the road. But if they said it was a bluesy thing, mate, like I would probably take that.
yes,
I don't know. I don't think people call you for gigs nowadays and don't tell you what happens. And this is where I guess I've heard got the guys kind of 2 levels ahead of me in the session world going like it's not how it was in the day where you turn up with your vault of 15 guitars and your amp head rack and your rack unit with MIDI switches, and it's just not like that. Normally, what most of the recording I do now is from home, where I've just got a Universal Audio Vault 2.
hmm,
I just record stereo out the Kempers, or I've got a couple of mics, I mic up an amp, normally Kemper, and then they send you the track over, potentially some music, potentially they just say do a part, potentially it's do something like this, and they send you a song over, and then you just record it and click go. Whereas back in the day, you'd turn up with all the gear, and
hmm,
now I'm just like, oh, I'll pick that up over there, and
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. I mean, something interesting you just said then, I just picked up on is you just sort of ad hoc, you just mentioned it, but I feel like there is a tiered system in like the guitar industry and in the music industry as well. Like in terms of the gig and the work you get, like you start from, and I still do them now because it's just nice to do sometimes. But like the pub gig, and then the sort of the function wedding band, and then you step into the theatre shows, and then you got the into the artist. There's probably gaps in between that. But do you feel the same as like a tiered system?
definitely. But then I think there's tiered systems of all of them.
Yeah.
So like, for example, I did a Sofa Sounds recently in Bristol with a new artist, a woman called Louise, whose artist name is Black Sage. Really lovely, like R&B pop, I guess you could say. I don't think she would like to say she's pop, but kind of is poppy. Um, and that was obviously very small and intimate. And but then there's Katy Perry. They're still it's still an artist gig, but there's a massive difference between a gig in Bristol doing a Sofa Sounds and then maybe an arena tour.
Hmm.
And then the same, for if you're doing like an Amdram kind of theatre show, as opposed to maybe a panto where it's a 7 show run, as opposed to a touring show, as opposed to the West End, as opposed to a touring West End show. Do you know, like
Yeah.
there's obviously tiers of like, a panto show as opposed to a pub gig,
Yeah.
massive production value difference.
Yes.
But then an Amdram show to a West End show, massively different.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like everything steps up, but then also everything has got its own
Yeah. Yeah.
bar graph too.
No, yeah, I agree with you completely. Talk us about then, Andrew. So you don't have to mention names here because obviously I don't want anyone to get yourself into trouble or whatever. But talk us about your best gig and maybe
Okay.
your worst gig, and it could be a gear thing because we touched upon this earlier about the Kemper and stuff. So it could be something like that. It doesn't have to be that you have to mention like this is the worst gig and the venue. I don't need to know that. But like, do you have a best gig that stands out for you? Like, well, I want to do 100%. Want to do more of that. And is there a worst gig where you're like, oh god, that all went wrong this evening?
Um,
Maybe it might be easier to start at the best one. I don't know.
being a musician, you only ever think about the bad things, don't you?
Yeah.
So the worst thing I've had a few. Um, so there's two that spring to mind, and I'll say them for different reasons because I think it's really important both of the stories,
Mhm. Okay.
and they're important for different reasons. So the first one, I got booked for a weekend of gigs, like I think it was the Friday, Saturday, or Saturday, Sunday from a band, and they said, "Oh yeah, we're using ears. We've got like a really nice system. Do you have a Kemper?" I said, "Yeah, I do. But I've just I've got this really nice new Mesa Boogie. It's like incredible. Like I'm gonna bring that." And then so I've got this. I think it was the single rectifier 112 combo.
Yeah.
And I had it in a flight case on wheels from Swan Flight. So bulletproof, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So I was living in Brighton at the time, and I drove to Horsham, which is at worst 35 minutes in the car.
Yeah.
Probably 25 if you put your foot down. And I loaded my amp into the car, and I'm gentle with my gear as well.
Yeah.
I opened it up, and there was no sound at the gig. So this is on the first night of the band. I think it's my second ever deck for them as well. And the guy says, "Well, you just have to plug straight into the desk." So at that point, all I have on the floor is a tuner, a Cali 76 compressor, a BB preamp, and a Strymon timeline. Because I was using the reverb on the amp. I said, "Is there any chance you put some reverb on the channel?" He goes, "Okay, that's fine." So I'm listening on my in-ears, and the guitar sounds absolutely awful. Because there's no preamp, there's no tone shaping at all. And it then went on to the fact there was dodgy power at the venue, and my timeline was flickering on and off, kind
It's
of
not getting enough
intermittently
power,
going.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I was using the Voodoo Lab 4x4, so I knew
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
wasn't that. I think it was the power going into it, and it was changing preset, and I could see the BPM thing, flashing up. Like for people that maybe not saw that, it was like a. And so I was looking at it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And this was just at Shut Up and Dance. I did the dotted 8 thing, and then my delay just turned off. So I then unplugged it, and I literally just had like a compressor and a distortion pedal.
Oh,
and I
dear.
had to try and get through the gig. And then the guy came up to me at the end as we loaded into the car. He said, "Bring your Kemper tomorrow, please." So that was a gear horror story.
Yeah.
It was,
What was wrong with the boogie then? What was wrong with the Mesa Boogie?
I think one of the valves went.
Okay.
Again, that's kind of why if it's an in-ear gig, there's no reason to bring an amp,
Mm.
in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah.
And then the second worst gig I've ever had was probably my second ever function I ever did. I was stepping for a guy called David Beebe.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You're smiling at because you know he's insane.
Yeah.
And I was stepping for him, and it was my second ever gig. And I brought my iPad along with all my charts on. I didn't know this was the band that call random songs in random orders, and they'd be like, I think we were going from one song into Brown Eyed Girl, and this guy went, "Andrew, give me that Brown Eyed Girl." Drummer clicks in, and I'm literally on my iPad like. And they also, so that didn't go very well because that was a different level of preparedness that I wasn't aware of.
Is that jazz way of thinking, do you think? Because I think that is. Is that not like a more of a jazz way of doing a gig, or not? Or is that just.
I don't know. I
Or
always
do you
thought,
feel like they're so tight that they just literally call songs as they go, sort of thing, and it was just.
yeah, and I guess they have been a band for a very long time, and they had, they were calling songs on the last 4 beats of the song, so they were
Yeah.
literally transitioning. However, if you're a dep and they don't have a whisper mic and you're not on in ears, and this was another thing that happened was there was a really bright light that was facing my way where the MD was, so I couldn't even lip read what he was saying. And I think my bit of my learning advice there was make sure you know the intros and outros really well,
Yeah.
so that even if you play the intro to a song and you are using a chart or it's a reading gig or whatever it is, you know that you can start the song if they call it.
Yes.
The second thing is don't be scared to then say, "Hey, can we move that light, please?"
Yeah.
Or "I can't hear this," or you need to can you not slow it down, but you need to say into your mic what you're doing next.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess when you're new coming into these things, you're very much just like everything just comes at you.
Yeah.
And well, from my experience anyway, it was a bit of a baptism of fire, really. I grew up playing in church, so from probably like age 11 or 12, I was playing in church where they would, you get the song list, and then you'd have your chord charts in front of you, and often there'd just be like an acoustic guitar, and I'd be the electric guitar player, and have a kind of smallish band, and you kind of be part writing, and they might chuck a song randomly on you, and your ear would get you through it, and you're just making up parts as you come along, which is obviously very, very different than
Hmm.
functions.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was interesting.
That's cool, mate. And yeah, I mean, going back to what you're saying about like the gig that you did and the light was in your face and all that sort of stuff, like I'm guessing as well, like you're being adept and stuff. Same, I've done this before, and I don't want to be a diva. I want to go and do a good job as possible, get on with everybody, and help out and be as helpful as possible at the gig. I don't want to be going, excuse me, do you mind moving that light, please? Even though we should just say that, like that is the obvious thing to say, isn't it? But you don't want to be like a diva and say, excuse me, can you get on the ladder and just move that light a bit for me?
But I guess the difference is though, if I shouldn't have said that after set one.
No.
What I should have done is while we are doing sound check, kind of looked around and gone, is there anything that could obstruct me on this gig
Yeah.
or would worry me? And I think now I kind of try and organise my rig like a little safety zone around me.
Yes.
So I have my pedal board in front of me. I try and have like my guitar rack or maybe the Kemper rack to the side,
Yep.
and then my obviously amp and stuff behind me. So if I make this little U and I go in this way, then there's nothing that can really fall in my way or get
Yes.
to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Hopefully.
Well, you're right, mate. It's like having a little station, isn't it? You got your own little pod, and once you're in there, you're sort of, and you do have your sort of, as you said, you had the rack to the, I don't know, right or left of you, but you do have your own. It's funny, you have your own little quirks. Like I like things to the left, or I like things to the right. It's like how you turn and how you sort of how you do things, isn't it? So that's pretty cool. Andrew, take us back there, mate, because we haven't really with you. I haven't really started from. You said you did stuff in church and stuff, but back to really back now, like back to school. Did you participate in music in school? Did you start learning guitar in school? When did your journey start on the guitar?
Okay, so I tried to learn guitar in year six. I must have been about 11, and the guy basically had one lesson with me and said, "No, he's not. Like, it's not going to work.
Not going to work.
It's not going to work. We're not going to do it." That was my first ever guitar lesson.
Oh,
And
mate,
then,
mate, amazed you carried on from there because that could have literally been the end of like, oh, I'm not doing it then.
I'm stubborn, as my wife would probably tell you. I'm as stubborn as an ox. However, I then went on to do a drum lesson with one of the guys at church, and I found out that I couldn't really get my feet to do different things and my hands to do different things. And then, so that all happened in the space of maybe 3 or 4 months, and then it must have been a couple of years later when I was at secondary school. So I think I started guitar between year 7 and year 8
Hmm.
that summer. We went away on this like church kind of retreat thing. It was like a summer thing for a week with the church, and there was one guy playing acoustic guitar, and I was watching him, and I was like, "Yeah, it doesn't look too hard. It's just you learning the finger shapes, and you're strong with this hand. I can do all that." I don't know what this guy was saying before about it being hard, and surprisingly, I don't know what it is, but like even when I think about chords now, I kind of see the fretboard diagram and I kind of see the pictures. And when I learn scale shapes and things, I can kind of see patterns overlaying.
Hmm.
And this guy taught me obviously the G, C minor, D, and people were shocked because I picked it up really quickly. And I don't know whether it's just because I found I know which way I learn.
Hmm.
So I kind of just studied his fingers and just imagined the dots on the fretboard, and then just was like, okay, well it's that. And if I just keep going back to it, it'll be fine. So within like maybe 20 minutes of playing his guitar, I could kind of strum very badly out. Well, I thought it sounded great, but I was like, yeah, I've got this. Cool. And then one of the guys in the church said to my parents, "Would you be offended if I gave you your son a guitar that's in my loft? I don't play it anymore." And it was this Encore round back acoustic, which I absolutely loved. And I just sat there for hours playing, and then I got an electric guitar. Another guy in our church was a really great guitar playing, really kind of inspiring, great teacher. And then I started having weekly lessons with him, and that was kind of that. That was kind of the start. I started playing in church, maybe like a couple of years later, and then um, I went out to school when we were picking our GCSEs, and the music teacher said, "No, I don't think it's right for Andrew to do music at school."
Really?
Yep. And then I was obviously playing quite a lot at this point. And I guess pausing that kind of thing, I was in like two minds of do I become like a primary school teacher or do I become a guitar player? And I had this kind of feeling, I guess. I was like, I'm going to take the safe option. And then I was watching The Voice one night, and I saw Adam Goldsmith play on there, and I was like, he's got some cool guitars. Man, he's like the real. So then I can't remember how I found out it was him. I think I might have typed in The Voice guitar player, and there was an interview, and I was like, oh my goodness, he like plays guitar on TV. This is insane. And then I obviously went onto his website and I found out he plays for X person. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I could probably do that if I tried. And then I went into school and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. And then that kind of subsided because I kind of didn't take music GCSE. And I was just kind of there. Went to do A levels and I had to audition for the music teacher because obviously I hadn't done GCSEs. And she said, no, not good enough.
Oh wow.
And which surprising because at that point I was kind of grade 5-ish.
Yeah.
And then I did 1 year of AS levels. I was really not liking school. It was I went to a UCAS fair and I saw the BIM in BIM Brighton. They had a stand where they had a Gibson Les Paul. And I went there with the only intention of I'm going to go to this university. I'm going to be a teacher. I saw this Les Paul. I was like, oh, that's quite nice. So I went out to it, and they obviously know exactly how to market the uni. And they're like, did you know you can be a professional guitar player coming to our uni? Which obviously we all know there's a lot of other things you have to do after that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw this guitar. I was like chatting to them, and they said, "Oh, why don't you come for an audition?" So I went for an audition, and they said, "Oh, have you thought about doing a diploma? Because obviously you've not done GCSE or A level music." So we then had this whole thing where, oh, could a 17-year-old move to Brighton by himself? No, was the answer to that. Didn't know anyone that could kind of support me down there. And then within like 2 weeks before I was supposed to be starting back at school for my second, like the A2 part of AS levels, I basically said to my parents, I'm not going back. I want to go to the local comprehensive college, which like I was at one of the top grammar schools in the area.
Right.
I was like going to basically the college where dropouts kind of went to do like BTEC, maths and English. And my parents were like, no. My dad actually used to work there as a support worker. So we went back and forth, and I said, I want to go to uni to play guitar. So my parents said, okay, if you do well at college, go for it. I got straight distinction star, like for all of every assignment, every performance, it was a distinction. I basically got 100% on the whole course, and it wasn't hard because I practiced and I worked hard at it.
Yeah.
But I guess my parents are now are very much like he does it, and he's going forward and he works hard, and I kind of proved to them and also myself, I guess, in that moment, like if you want something, you will go get it. Like
Yeah.
the harder you work, the luckier you get is a really great saying because everyone, I think, will get a chance to be, the guitar player or get the gigs they want to get. However, there's always someone in the room that could give you that gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're prepared enough and you've practiced hard enough and you're hungry enough for it, you'll get it, I believe.
Yes.
But everyone might. Let's say everyone has roughly 3 to 5 chances of someone being in the room that could change their life with a gig. It's just making sure, I guess, that you're ready for that.
Yeah. No, you're right, mate. And like, it sounds like, even though like it sounded pretty mean for them, the first guitar lesson, for the guy to say, "Nah, this ain't gonna work," and then for when you were going in for AS levels, they said, "Nah, it's not good enough or whatever." Like, it sounds like you needed those knockbacks anyway, and
Yeah.
I think that maybe built you a little bit differently, and now you are doing what you're doing. So it's good sometimes to have those knockbacks because maybe you could say without those knockbacks, you maybe would be doing something completely different now. I don't know.
I'm definitely like a very hard learner, I guess. It it really winds me up that some people can learn something very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I often have to work very hard to get to the same point someone else can get it very easily.
Yeah.
But I've had teachers that have come across very harshly to me, and gone, I know you want to learn this, but you can't do this. So let's have a look at that first. And I guess that's really, really helped me in my career, my learning, the way I do business. Like, it's really useful I guess you got to learn. Some people need, a bit of a cuddle to learn.
Yes.
Some people need, you're pretty bad, mate. Can you sort that out?
Yeah.
I'm definitely on the latter.
Yeah, no, and sometimes people do need a little bit of a shock. Like you can, most people, as you said, it's nice to nurture them and sort of give them a bit of a cuddle sort of thing. But sometimes you do need the hard truth, and you go, actually, no, that's not good enough. You need to do this, and you need to go back and do this. And until you've done that, we can't do the next thing, and you can't get to this sort of level if you're not doing this. So you are right. Like there is a bit of like tough love, isn't it, along the way? Especially in any industry, I feel like, but especially in the music industry, there's a lot of that.
Hmm.
It's funny actually. You mentioned Adam Goldsmith because obviously someone that I look up to as well, and just think in terms of session world, he's top of his game. I was having a conversation with him this morning. And he's going to come on hopefully in the next few
Amazing.
weeks to do a bit of a podcast with him. So that'll be interesting as well because I watch him. I've seen him. You see him on the telly all the time. I always say to my missus Charlotte. She probably knows who he is, even though I just mentions the name. She doesn't know many guitarists, but I'll just say, "Oh, it's Adam Goldsmith again. He's on the telly doing something for somebody else. Like he's doing this show or that show, and you've constantly seen him on the telly."
And do you know what?
Um,
He's actually one of the most supportive guitar players I've met.
yeah.
Insanely lovely guy. I remember being 15, messaging him on Instagram, and him actually responding and being nice.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I kind of look back at myself sometimes, and I'm like, these people I now know, right? I've scrolled back. I'm like, is that the first message you sent to them? Oh, hey mate, if ever you need a deck for the voice, I could sort you out.
Yeah.
And
But
you're like, you're
we've all
15.
done that, mate. We've all done that. Like
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
done
I know.
that as well. Like
People probably think so.
we've all done that because we think that's the way at the time to get the work. Like you just message somebody who's doing it already and say, if you need a dep, give me a shout. I'll be happy to stand in and do the voice for you. Like when you're not busy
Yeah,
on
you're like
busy that weekend.
15. You're 15. You can't read quarter notes like on a bit of music,
Yeah.
and you have a Squire Strat and like a box metals on. You're like, yeah, I've got this. Don't worry, mate. Take the night off. I've got you.
No, and you're right, mate. But we've all done it. I admit to that. I've sent messages in the past to musicians like that, and sometimes I said I've spoken to Adam before in the past as well about this sort of thing, session work and stuff. And as you said, he's a lovely guy, and he's got back to me. And I'm not saying to anyone who's watching this to just go and message him and send him loads of messages because he's probably not going to start replying to everybody. But he is a really sort of approachable guy. And offered me advice over the years as well, like when I've had messages and
Yeah.
conversations with him. But
I think it's about taking it in doses, isn't it? If you message them, every day for like 3 weeks, they're gonna get a bit annoyed. They might just say, book a lesson if you want to chat.
yeah,
But if it's like, hey, I've got this unit and I saw you did this, I have absolutely no idea how you got that sound. The likelihood is he's just going to bend over and just, take a photo of it and send it to you.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like,
you're right.
I was chatting to Michael Britt yesterday because I was asking him about how he runs his pedal board and stuff, and
Yeah,
just, proper Kemper nerdery stuff. And I said to him, like, oh, what do you run for your acoustic on it? And he just sent me his profile for free. It's not even available.
no,
Like, these
no,
guys are, I guess that's also another thing is I'm not like I don't know how this is going to come across, but as you go up the pecking order, I guess, and you get better gigs and you meet people and you become friends
hmm,
rather than just like some random guy who's following them on Instagram.
yeah,
That everyone's human. I remember my dad saying, I was like, oh my goodness, is this guy on guitar? Oh my goodness, is this person? He was like, he goes to the toilet the same as you, mate.
yeah, yes,
And yeah, I thought that was like, I still laugh at some of the stuff my dad says, but like that was one of the crackers that I was like, yeah,
that's true. That is true. Like they
yeah,
are all human, and as you just said, Michael Britt. This is really funny because I've had done the same thing as you and had a conversation with him in the past about Kemper stuff
yeah.
because I've downloaded all his profiles for like what I use, and I use his profiles live because they are, in my opinion, there's some other ones as well as Tone Junkie and stuff like that, but I use the M Britt ones because they are very good, and I think they're the best in terms of like just don't really need to do a lot with them, a bit of tweaking here and there, and they sound great. And I've had conversation with him in the past about the Kemper profiles and stuff, and he's just really open and honest, and like as you said, like really helpful, and like yeah, I'll send you something, or try this and try that, and tweak this, and really helpful. But as you said, these people are human, um, and I'm sure you've had the opposite though, because I have, where you message somebody and maybe I don't know they're too busy or they maybe feel they're too far up the chain and they don't want to talk to you because you're too far down the chain. And I've had that before where they just don't get back. You see the little thing if they've maybe seen it, like on the picture, like they've seen your message, but they just don't never get back to you.
However, I've also had experiences where kind of that's happened to me, been completely ignored, blanked, and then I've kind of, I guess hanging out with the people they want to hang out with, and they've come up to me in the middle of a bar and been like, "Hey man, how you doing?" And I'm like, "I don't know you.
No.
Like, I messaged you 3 years ago, and
Yes.
I'm not one to like hold a grudge or be
No,
weird,
no.
but like at the same time, you're like, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I can kind of already see you don't want to be my friend. You just want the work I'm getting."
Yes. Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I'm even like I'm nowhere near the top. Like, very, I want this to come across as like, although I've done some really cool stuff, we all still do the weddings. I do far less teaching than I do or have done,
Mhm.
but I probably only do probably 3 to maybe 5 hours a week, and even that, I'm not taking on new students now. I don't have the time because I'm doing other stuff, but
Yeah, of course.
we all do what we got to do because you got to make a living. And I
Yeah.
think, I guess the thing is that as you go up, other people are going up, and
Mhm.
other people are going down because they might not have cared about the gig. And there's this constant ladder shift, I guess, and it's people who are with you on the up you'll know who your friends are on the way down.
Yeah. Yep.
When you lose that big gig, are they still messaging you wanting to hang out?
Yes. You're right, mate. I've had exactly the same, literally the exact same as what you just mentioned. Where
I actually had it when I done this when I did the Louise Redknapp thing. I didn't even post a picture of her. I just posted a picture of my maiden, and I said, "Doing a recording for Louise." I cannot tell you how many people that have never sent me a message before on Instagram
yeah,
sent me a message like, "Hey, bro, yeah, we should meet up and hang out." I still to this day have never met them.
no, no,
But my mates, the ones who were like, "Oh, mate, yeah, good luck. Let us know how it goes." That was all they kind of said.
yes,
Those are the people still here.
yeah, yeah. You're right, and there are I don't know what they sort of maybe latch on because they think, oh, he's doing well. I want to move up with him. Let's send him a message and see if I can sort of you know get in correspondence with him. And I've been following you for a while, Andrew. To be honest, I mean, we've not met in terms of in person, but just because of where we live. I live in Bristol, and you live on the outskirts of London, as you said. But I've been following you for a while on like Instagram and stuff. We've had a few conversations in the past about gear, bits, bobs, and and things like that. And that's why when looking for guests for this, I'm like, these are perfect. I want to talk to real musicians who are doing the day to day stuff. I find that interesting, and I know other people do as well. Like, um,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do, and I find it interesting to talk to other musicians about what they're doing and how they
Mm.
make a living in the industry and gear, all that sort of stuff, all the nerdy stuff that we all enjoy talking about. But
Well, definitely next time in Bristol. I know you haven't invited me, but I'm going to invite myself over.
yeah,
We'll
no, you're welcome to, mate. You're more than welcome to. I know that you're I said you because you said you did a Sofa Sounds gig or something in Bristol. Like, yeah, you're more than welcome, mate. Anytime that you're in the area, and you're more than welcome to pop in. I actually live sort of like I live in Keynsham, which is like in between like Bath and Bristol, so it's like. But yeah, mate, you're more than welcome. And I mean, I
That'd
don't
be
really
great.
travel to London very often, but as I said, I don't really do that.
It's always
But
always open except right now.
yeah. You said earlier as well, you got people scaffolders out there we didn't say at the beginning, because if there's any sort of banging and drilling, it's just
That's
typical,
not
isn't it, on the
me.
day we booked
My
in?
job.
It
It's not my
No.
wife.
You said you got scaffolders, sort of something going on outside at the moment. So yeah, every now and again I can hear a little drilling in the background. So I do apologise, but it is nature is the beast, isn't it? You do a live thing online, and sometimes we get a bit of background noise. It's fine. But yeah, um, I said, Andrew, it's been my pleasure, mate, to sit down and sort of speak to you. And I'm sure I said if anyone has any questions for you, I'm just going to quickly check, but I think we're all good. But if anyone does have any questions for Andrew, about anything to do with in the music industry, then drop it on the thread, and I'm sure I said you'll see it, and I'll see it, and if not, I'll tag you in it anyway and say like, can you answer this one? But this will go up live, as I said. It's going live now, and it will go up onto Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all that sort of stuff. So people can sort of watch and listen back as well to it.
I guess one thing actually that I
Yeah,
would like to say,
go on.
something that's like not spoken about
Hmm.
that much. Everyone talks about gear. Everyone talks about your friends. Everyone talks about, oh, how did you get this gear? Well, I got it from my friend who did this. No, no, no. When you're there and there's stress and there's lights and you've got a rubbish in-ear mix, or there's a wedge that's too loud and it's blistering and you haven't had the set, you have to be good. Like, and I'm not saying that I'm amazing in this,
Yeah.
But like one thing I really wish, and I do now, is I wish I practiced harder when
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah.
Because it's something that especially during COVID, I was doing like 4 or 5 hours a day, sometimes even 6 hours a day, just to feel like I was catching up.
Hmm.
But then there's the reality that you see people on Instagram and there's that, the feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough.
Yep.
But that's the person's 1%. They're playing for every 100 takes, you know, that's the one take.
Yeah.
That's good. And I guess that's something that I would constantly see myself as the 99 player, not the really great playing. So my thing, if anyone's listening to this, is the best guitar player will get the gig,
Hmm.
unless they're a bit of an idiot. Then they probably will get the gig once and not get the call back because they're horrible.
Yes. Yeah. You're right, mate. Sometimes it's, as you said, best guitar player tends to get the gig, but it's not always about that. And we spoke about this on other podcasts about sometimes it's just about the person. If you can't get on with people and you're sat in the back of a tour van going up and down the country and you're just like impossible to get on with or work with, even if you're the best guitarist in the world, you ain't going to get the call back.
Yeah.
So,
Like for example, right? So when I look at kind of the industry as it is, if I look at the pop side of things, which is kind of where I would want to be, I guess.
yeah,
I can kind of see three guys. There's kind of Paul Murray, Ben Jones, and Louis Allen, who you've had on the podcast.
yes,
They're all lovely people. Like really, really nice to be around. Very friendly, very humble guys. They play so well, like, all the time.
yes,
I'm yet to see a video of them live. Not one they've done on Instagram.
yeah,
Not one that they've had the chance to take a take on, but where I've seen them either in the room or it is live, and they sound amazing.
yeah.
And I guess it's like if you want that gig, you have to play well. You
Oh
have
yeah,
to be good, and you have to be confident when you're playing.
yeah. I mean, I took lessons a while back off Louis Allen. In the I think it was in like lockdown sort of thing. I was just like, oh, I'm going to take some lessons with, and absolute phenomenal guitar player and the nicest guy. We had some amazing conversations about working with Jesse J and all this sort of stuff, which is really amazing sort of conversations to have with him and just find out some really cool stuff. And that's one thing I would say as well as a bit of a advice to anybody: if you can afford it, find these guys like Adam Goldsmith, Louis Allen, all these big guys in the industry, and just pay their rate, their going rate, and it will be the best thing you ever do. Like I paid for the lessons, I had a good few lessons with him, and then I couldn't keep it going unfortunately just because it got really busy when everything opened back up again. But like just pay for that lesson just for the insight that you get, from the industry and what you'll take from that. Say you pay £45, £55 for a lesson or whatever. You do it once a month or however much you can afford. And the insight you get from that lesson and just that chat with that person and what they've done in the industry, it is worth it,
I mean,
100%.
similarly to you, I finished university, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to London. It's going to be great. First night, I saw Charlie Allen play, and I was like, oh my goodness. And it was like, okay, I need some lessons. So anyone that I like they're playing, you know what? Definitely when I started, I'd literally be like, I saw you do this. Like, can you explain what this is? I don't want to learn your lick. I
No,
don't want to copy you. I just want to know what you were thinking about over that.
yeah,
Because a concept lesson is way better than a lick based lesson.
yeah,
And I guess the difference is, we might charge anywhere 30, 40, £45,
hmm,
but £5 or £10 more, you're going to get the person that can actually do it
yes,
and, has been doing it for years at the highest level.
yes,
I don't think, and I don't think it's that much personally, but I also think they give you so much to work on. I remember having lessons. I had one lesson with Charlie actually when I first kind of met him, and a bit more friendly now rather than teacher student relation. But he was one of those guys that gave me one thing, and it took me 6 months to just kind of like actually feel like I got it.
yes, yeah,
Because when you're getting your weekly guitar lesson, it may be a bit cheaper with someone else.
hmm,
They'll give you enough for the next bite. Whereas some of these players like, see you in 6 months.
yes, yeah. Yeah, yeah, and it depends, isn't it? It depends like who's going for the lesson because I feel
Mm.
like at your level and like where I am as well, like we need that sort of thing. We need to go and
Yeah.
meet these, have these lessons with the bigger sort of people. But if you're just starting and you want to learn Smoke on the Water,
Oh
you
yeah.
don't really want to be going to wind up Louis Allen. Can you teach
Yeah.
me Smoke on the Water? I mean, it's not something like his. It's not his thing, is it? He's sort of a level above that, really. But you know, I'm sure I'm sure he's done that sort of thing in the past. But you know, it's more probably, I'd say, for professional
Yeah.
guitarists who are looking to further their careers and learn, dig into more information. That's the guys that you want to go and sort of invest that money and go and see these sort of people.
I guess the other thing though, sometimes I felt like that where I couldn't approach someone because I'm like, oh, they're too good. They don't have time for me.
Hmm.
And I guess that's what's been helpful to me is to actually have something to talk about rather than be like, you're really good. Can you teach me how to play guitar? It's like, hey, I saw you did this thing. If you have like, I guess the comprehension to go, I heard you do this thing over
Hmm.
this chord in this song.
Yeah.
Why?
Yes.
And half the time, the answers I've had is, um, I don't know. I just play something random.
Yeah.
That's actually really helpful to know because sometimes I over theoreticalize everything. I'm
Yeah.
like, why did they get a flat nine on a major seven chord? It's because they slid into the wrong note.
Yeah.
That was it, and then
Yes.
they've managed to then undo their mistake. Because the thing is, these guys make mistakes. It's the when they do, they land it.
Yeah. Well, that's
Rather
the
than
thing.
stop and go, oh no.
That's the thing. Like they know. If they make a slight mistake or whatever, they know how to just
Yeah,
correct it. And it always is just one fret one way or the other, really, isn't it?
definitely.
I had a student do that yesterday, and I said to him, I was just like, "You did that as a mistake." I said, "But I thought that sounded amazing. What you
Yeah,
just did, he like hit a note in between," and I was like, "Oh," and it was a bit sort of spicy, but he he did it, and I was like, "That was amazing." And he was like pulled a face because it was like a horrible. It just didn't sound great. But how he sort of covered it up and moved to the next note, I said to him that sounded really cool. I really like that over what we were playing. I thought that was really quite a cool thing to do. But
actually, with that story, I remember my dad because obviously my parents went to the same church I did growing up, and my dad would always at the end of the show go, or the end of the service go, "You made six mistakes today, didn't you?" And I'd be like, because he's not a musician, I'm not in a musical family at all, like by no means, and I'd be like, "How did you know?" And he was like, "You keep pulling faces,
there you go.
pulling faces."
That's the thing, mate. If you ride it out, I do this. That's the same as me. Like if I play with the band, and I do inevitable mistake or whatever, it's just an obvious one. I do laugh about it, and we have a proper giggle and like on stage. But maybe we shouldn't do that. Like we should just. I didn't make a mistake. No, that was meant to be like that. No, it was meant to be. But I'm too honest. I'll laugh. I'll be like, that was hilarious. That's so funny how that I hit that over that. That should never have happened. But yeah, like I just laugh about it. But I think sometimes it can be a bit too serious, can't it? But
It's also about just not taking it too seriously. Like we
yeah,
didn't. I don't know about you. I didn't become a guitar player, for the money, and I didn't become a guitar player, for the seriousness. I get to play guitar every day for a job. Like
yeah,
it's the biggest joke going, to be honest, that people pay for me to live in my flat and my wife and my dog and equipment. Like people pay for this.
yeah, yeah.
Like no day is work, really, is it?
No,
Let's be honest.
no, and you're right. I mean, I didn't get into guitar. Definitely not for the money.
Mm.
There's other careers I could have done if I wanted to
Oh
make
yeah.
a huge salary, but it's not. You don't really get into this. I feel like your path is already sort of chosen in a way. You're good at certain things in life, and guitar was that. And I knew from a young age that that was what I wanted to do. And I'm sure I know your story is a little bit different, but I'm sure there was a point where you went, "This is what I want to do." I know, and that gut feeling is always right. Like you always just go with what your gut feeling, I suppose. But
I'll ask you a question.
of course you can, mate. Yeah, go on.
Have you ever been close to giving up?
Uh, the thoughts. I will be honest with you, mate. The thoughts have crossed my mind. Yes.
In what
Um,
season of life is it though? Is it normally a financial or a career choice?
um, I don't think it's. Well, I don't know. That's a really good question, actually. I'm going to try and answer this as honest as possible. I think yes, that thought has 100% crossed my mind, and then I always sort of very quickly afterwards rethink it and go, "Oh no, but you've been doing this such a long time." I feel this guilt. Like
Yeah.
if I did a couple of times, mate, I'll be honest with you, I've thought about joining the police.
Hmm.
Um, I just feel like I've always been interested in doing something like a bit different, completely different, and I'd like quite like to do that. I got to the point where I had the interview and I had like the degree police holder thing, and I was like, oh, and then I just had this horrible thing of guilt, like I'm turning my back on the guitar, and
Mm.
and I just thought, no, I've been doing it so long, since I was 8 years old, and I just such a 33 now, and that's like turning my back on everything. And that was driven, I suppose, by a salary thing, really. I thinking, I could be a policeman. I know I got to do it for a few years, and then I start moving up the salary line, and that was mainly purely driven by sort of, a salary, wanting a steady salary. As a musician, as you know, it's up and down, isn't it? And wanted that security for my life and for my wife and now my boy buddy, like just having that security. So yeah, I mean that's a really great question. I hope answered that as honest as possible. But yes, I have. And have you had similar things or not yet? Or
I think there's definitely times. The reason why I was asking is I don't think anyone would ever want to turn their back on music.
no?
For a career. Normally it's financial, and the thing is, if I ask you how many times have you earned £300, you'd go hundreds.
Yeah,
How many times have you earned a full year's salary from guitar? A lot.
yeah,
But you just got to stick it out. Like if you want to do it, you'll do
yeah,
it. You live by the music, you die by the music, right?
yeah. No, you're right.
Um, I've definitely had thoughts of it, and it's normally a financial thing of, oh, I could earn this doing this somewhere else. But again, similarly to you with the time thing, I'm so close
Hmm.
to doing different, better things.
Yes.
The thing is, I guess you're similar where you can have a phone call tomorrow with the biggest gig of your life because someone can't make it because they're on tour with someone else.
Yeah.
But then you could also decide to be a policeman.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you could decide to do something else that may pay better. But I guess that's the excitement, isn't it? Of, oh, we get to play our guitar. Oh, I don't know what the phone's going to ring.
Yeah. Like
I regularly in the summer I was doing sort of 7 or 8 gigs in a week. It was incredible. All with different bands and different set lists, and it was a bit stressful at the time. But I was having the time of my life, just meeting new people, playing new things, getting phone calls from random people on the way to a gig saying, I remember there was this one thing. I was on a gig in Birmingham, and I got asked if I could then come back to the Ned to then be there for like 1 a.m. to like 3 or so silly like that. And I was like on the way to the gig, being like, okay, if I leave this time, I can probably squeeze it in.
yeah.
All
Yeah.
this, and it's like that's exciting.
Yeah. You do get really good weeks. So I've had really great weeks where the whole week has been amazing. I've done like a few lessons and I've had gigs and stuff like that, and it's created done a bit of session work, and it's created an amazing week in my mind. Like, and I'm like, this is exactly what I wanted to do. This is why I did this, and I still get reminders of that. Um, yeah, and it does, it does happen from time to time. You get those amazing weeks, just everything seems to run perfectly, and you're like, this is exactly, and this is part of the reason why, like doing this. I started doing this podcast because I just want to keep trying to sort of, doing things differently and trying so I don't get myself bored, like doing one thing or too many, just trying to keep things interesting for me.
Yeah,
And talking with other musicians, as I said, I'm interested in gear and talking about different careers and things like that. So I enjoy it anyway. I enjoyed the chat. So it's quite nice to do. And I'm sure you're,
it's been lovely being on this, mate. Like, it's really. I was actually, you know what? Again, when you messaged me, my first thing back to you was, "What do you want to talk about?" Because in my mind, I'm like, I haven't done anything.
no, it's just
It's funny though, isn't it?
it's real life, mate. That's what I'm trying to get to the crux of it. Is real life, like being a guitarist. What is it like? What is day to day like? What do you do? I love all the nitty gritty stuff. When you watch the little interviews on YouTube about, you know, um, what people do in their day and things like that as a musician, and I find that really fascinating, really interesting. Because that's the nitty gritty stuff. The stuff that we see on Instagram and Facebook, as we all know, is just the best stuff that we put out there. I'm on this really cool gig. This is me. Da, da, da. Like we all do that. We're all guilty of doing that because it is a business and you are advertising and promoting yourself all the time, constantly. But I love the nitty gritty stuff, the real, true, honest stuff. Like this is what it looks like today. I did this, I did this, I did this, and this is what my day looks like on a Monday. That's the stuff I find really sort of fascinating and interesting, to be honest.
Mm.
So yeah, I said, mate, thank you very much for coming on today. But I'm sure I said if anyone does have any questions for you, which I'm sure they will drop that in the thread. So just keep an eye on that because and I'll tag you in it if someone does say something that for you to answer. But I said it's been a pleasure, Andrew, and I said if you are ever in Keynsham, Bristol area,
Oh, mate.
do
And if
do
you're
send
ever
me
in
a
London,
message.
if you're
Yeah.
ever over here, give me a shout.
Yeah, I said from time to time we do. Me and my wife just sort of go away to London for a weekend or something, and it was a consideration all those years ago. I did sort of consider moving to London when I was in BIM, and then I made the decision back then. Just now, I sort of met my wife Charlotte and settled down, and I ended up, Bristol's where I grew up, so I sort of ended up staying in Bristol.
Well,
But
regardless of playing guitar, it'd be lovely to meet your wife, and you can obviously meet my wife, and it'll be nice.
yeah, that'd be great, mate. And I know you got a Shih Tzu as well, haven't you? You got a little dog.
We do. He's it's been a bit of a palaver. He's had surgery. He's got the big old cone round him at the moment.
Oh no.
Fractured jaw from having a canine extraction.
Oh Christ.
But the antibiotics they've given him, I'm severely allergic to, and
Oh,
yeah. So
oh dear.
I'm basically having to glove. Otherwise, I would bring him in and put him on.
Yeah, no worries.
I can't touch him at the moment, which is really annoying. And he keeps
Oh,
following
mate.
me around like, why? Look, I'm still here. Like, love me. Come on. Like you have Shih Tzus, you know exactly like their stubborn nature, and
Yeah.
they're not getting the attention they want. They're like, come on.
Oh, mate, they're amazing to have around. Like having a dog is amazing. Like they're so good and so much company. But sometimes, especially when nobody's around, and one of them's got even more clingy, like constantly like on your lap, wants a cuddle, like and you haven't always got time to sit down for like 20 minutes like he wants. It's just like 5 minutes, he's sat on your lap, and then you're like, right, off you get.
Yeah.
But they are lovely to have around, mate, and I do know that sort of Shih Tzus are lovely dogs. But yeah. So at some point, I will get to meet your your Shih Tzu.
Yeah.
Probably when he's not got the cone of shame on his head either.
Yeah. Hopefully not.
I'm hoping you got insurance for that because we've recently had
what?
something. But
You know what?
no,
Dental isn't covered.
is it not?
No, if you look at your insurance, I said this to my wife the other day. Again, this is the thing. We all chat about gear, but there is real life.
Yeah.
If you're not on Instagram right now. Yeah, did you know dental and eyes are not covered?
Wow, I did not know that, mate.
So
So that's
if your dog, let's say, I don't know, has broken tooth or they get hit by another dog and their jaw breaks or something, that's not
yeah.
covered by all the insurance you pay every month.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, because we rescued him, yeah, Alfie. He's 12 years old
Yeah.
and he's going blind, got dementia.
Oh.
He's like teeth are going. He's a right
Oh.
old geezer, is Alfie. But yeah, basically all of those things are not covered by insurance.
Wow, I did not know that, mate. That is handy to know because I was recently went in for she had like a very light ear infection, but she wouldn't let the vet, as you know, stubborn Shih Tzus, she would not let the vet go anywhere near her ear. She was just going crazy. So we had to, unfortunately, we had to put her under for them to do what they needed to do just to get some stuff in her ear and clean out her ear. £500, £600. Like it went through insurance because we got insurance, but it's interesting that you say that things like that with their teeth and with their eyes is not covered. But
Well, we had the joy the other day of he went under for surgery, tooth
yeah,
extraction, and they've still got to do more because they didn't get it all done. It's like £1,000.
yeah,
We're like, oh my goodness, which
yeah,
guitar are
yeah.
we selling tonight?
Mate, that's real life. That is the thing,
Yeah.
and you love them to bits, so you want them to have the best sort of treatment. So I sympathise with that. That is that is a scary bill, but I'm sure.
Nice one, mate. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's lovely to
No,
chat.
thank you, mate. It's lovely to chat with you. And I said, I hopefully will see you again soon, Andrew. But keep in touch. I will keep an eye on you as well.
Nice one, mate. Same
Awesome. Thank you very much, Andrew. I'll see you soon. You take care.
here. You too, mate.